Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Back in July, you said that the gun issue has been the most frustrating of your presidency, and we certainly heard that frustration from you last night.
Yep.
So in the last 15 months of your presidency, do you intend to do anything differently to get Congress to act or to do something about this gun violence problem? And I have to get you to respond to something that Jeb Bush said. Mm-hmm. And to be fair to Governor Bush, I want to read it directly. Okay. Asked about the drive to take action in light of what happened in Oregon. He said, look, stuff happens. There's always a crisis, and the impulse is always to do something, and it's not always the right thing to do. How would you react to Governor Bush?
I don't even think I have to react to that one. I think the American people should hear that and make their own judgments based on the fact that every couple of months we have a mass shooting. And in terms of, and they can decide whether they consider that stuff happening. In terms of what I can do, I've asked my team, as I have in the past, to scrub what kinds of authorities do we have to enforce the laws that we have in place more effectively to keep gun out of the hands of criminals? Are there additional actions that we can take that might prevent even a handful of these tragic deaths from taking place? But, as I said last night, this will not change until the politics changes and the behavior of elected officials changes. And so the main thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this on a regular basis. And I will politicize it because our inaction is a political decision that we are making. The reason that Congress does not support even the modest gun safety laws that we proposed after Sandy Hook is not because the majority of the American people don't support it. I mean, normally, politicians are responsive to the views of the electorate. Here you've got majority of the American people think it's the right thing to do. Background checks, other common sense steps that would maybe save some lives, couldn't even get a full vote. And why is that? It's because of politics. It's because interest groups fund campaigns, feed people fear, and in fairness, it's not just in the Republican Party, although the Republican Party is just uniformly opposed to all gun safety laws. And unless we change that political dynamic, we're not going to be able to make a big dent in this problem. For example, you'll hear people talk about the problem's not guns, it's mental illness. Well, if you talk to people who study this problem, it is true that the majority of these mass shooters are angry young men, but there are hundreds of millions of angry young men around the world. Tens of millions of angry young men. Most of them don't shoot. It doesn't help us just to identify, and the majority of people who have mental illnesses are not shooters. So we can't sort through and identify ahead of time who might take actions like this. The only thing we can do is make sure that they can't have an entire arsenal when something snaps in them. And if we're going to do something about that, the politics has to change. The politics has to change. And the people who are troubled by this have to be as intense and as organized and as adamant about this issue as folks on the other side who are absolutists and think that any gun safety measures are somehow an assault on freedom or communistic or a plot by me to take over and stay in power forever or something. I mean, there are all kinds of crackpot conspiracy theories that float around there, some of which, by the way, are ratified by elected officials in the other party on occasion. So we've got to change. We've got to change the politics of this, and that requires people to feel, not just feel deeply, because I get a lot of letters after this happens. Do something. Well, okay. Here's what you need to do. You have to make sure that anybody who you are voting for is on the right side of this issue. And if they're not, even if they're great on other stuff, for a couple of election cycles, you got to vote against them and let them know precisely why you're voting against them. And you just have to, for a while, be a single issue voter, because that's what is happening on the other side. And that's going to take some time. I mean, the NRA has had a good start, you know. They've been at this a long time. They've perfected what they do. You got to give them credit. They're very effective, because they don't represent the majority of the American people. But they know how to stir up fear. They know how to stir up base. They know how to raise money. They know how to scare politicians. They know how to organize campaigns. And the American people are going to have to match them in their sense of urgency if we're actually going to stop this. Which isn't to say stopping all violence. We're not going to stop all violence. Violence exists around the world, sadly. Part of original sin. But our homicide rates are just a lot higher than other places that, by the way, have the same levels of violence. It's just you can't kill as many people when you don't have easy access to these kinds of weapons. And I'm deeply saddened about what happened yesterday, but Arnie's going back to Chicago. Let's not forget, this is happening every single day in forgotten neighborhoods around the country. Every single day. Kids are just running for their lives, trying to get to school. Broderick, we were down in New Orleans, sitting down with a group of young men when we were talking about Katrina, and I've got two young men next to me. Both of them had been shot multiple times. They were barely. So we got to make a decision. If we think that's normal, then we have to. I don't think it's normal. I think it's abnormal. I think we should change it. But I can't do it by myself. So main thing I'm going to do, John, is talk about it and hope that over time, changing enough minds along with other leaders around the country, that we start finally seeing some action. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. Sure.